Aquarius, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt it? That strange moment when you're not saying anything, you're not doing anything, yet somehow, people keep talking about you. Not because you're loud, not because you're chasing attention, but because you walked away from something unfinished. And now, someone out there is still carrying the weight of what they never admitted to you. If you're an Aquarius, February 2026 isn't about new beginnings. It's about unfinished business finding its way back to you. Not through drama, not through confrontation, but through something much quieter and much more uncomfortable. And maybe the strangest part is this, Aquarius. You can feel it without anyone telling you, that subtle shift in the air, like a room you've already left. But somehow, the conversation is still happening. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's more like a quiet echo that follows you, even when you're focused on building something new. A feeling that says, something from your past never really closed the door. You see, there are moments in life when silence isn't emptiness. Silence is memory. Silence is what's left when words were never spoken at the right time. And I wonder, have you noticed how some people only realize your value once you stop explaining yourself? Because what's happening now isn't about attention. It's about awareness. Someone, somewhere, is replaying old scenes in their mind. Not because they missed the story, but because they're starting to understand the role you played in it. You were never meant to stay in a place where you had to shrink your truth to keep the peace. Aquarius energy was never designed for quiet compromise. You're here to move forward, not to keep circling unfinished emotional contracts. Still, even the most evolved souls leave behind footprints. And some people can't move on until they understand why those footprints disappeared. It's interesting, isn't it? How you can outgrow a situation, but the situation keeps growing inside someone else. They start asking questions you no longer need answered. They begin searching for closure you already found within yourself. And without realizing it, they turn you into a symbol of something they didn't know how to hold. Not love, not regret. Something deeper than both. It's the awareness that a moment was mishandled, that a choice was made too quickly. That something real slipped through their fingers while they were busy protecting their ego. And you kept walking. That's the part they struggle with the most. Not that you left, but that you didn't come back. Aquarius, there's a quiet power in being the person who doesn't demand answers, who doesn't need apologies to move forward, who understands that peace is more valuable than being right. You didn't disappear. You simply chose not to stay where your soul felt misunderstood. And maybe that's why your name keeps coming up. Not because you're trying to be remembered, but because you represented a version of themselves they never fully lived. Let me ask you something, gently. When was the last time you felt truly seen, without having to explain yourself? Because the story unfolding around you now isn't about what you lost. It's about what you outgrew. There's a certain kind of cosmic balance that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with dramatic revelations or emotional confrontations. It arrives as reflection, as realization, as that quiet moment when someone finally understands what your absence means, and you don't even have to witness it. That's the beauty of it. Your role was never to teach them a lesson. Your role was simply to choose yourself. Everything else is just the universe adjusting the energy you left behind. So while they're still trying to understand the past, you're already standing in a different timeline. One where your peace doesn't depend on their awareness. And maybe that's the real shift happening in February 2026. Not that people are talking about you, but that you've stopped needing to know what they're saying. Which makes me curious. If someone from your past suddenly reached out, not with answers, but with a strange sense of timing, would you recognize it as coincidence? Or as the universe gently closing a door that was never meant to stay open forever? It didn't hurt the way heartbreak hurts. It was quieter than that. More subtle. Like realizing too late that you've been paying for something you never really agreed to. You remember the moment, don't you? Not the details, not the exact numbers or words, but the feeling in your body when something didn't sit right, and you chose not to question it. It wasn't greed, it wasn't weakness, it was trust. You believed in the relationship more than the contract. You believed in the person more than the system. And for someone like you, Aquarius, that kind of faith comes from a pure place. You don't see life as a battlefield. You see it as a shared experiment. So when the outcome felt uneven, you didn't react. You adjusted. You told yourself it was fine. That peace was more valuable than proving a point. That money, opportunities, recognition, those things would come back around anyway. And they did. Just not in the way you expected. Because the real cost was never the loss itself. It was the moment you realized your generosity had been mistaken for availability. Your flexibility had been mistaken for consent. Your silence had been mistaken for agreement. That kind of realization doesn't make you angry. It makes you awake. You started noticing patterns. How often you were the one compromising. How easily your ideas became someone else's success. How your presence added value to rooms that never gave you a seat at the table. Still, you didn't confront. You didn't expose. You didn't even explain. You simply stepped back. And in doing so, you rewrote the contract without ever sending a message. There's a maturity in that most people never understand. The ability to leave a situation without demanding compensation for the emotional labor you invested. The ability to walk away without turning your pain into a performance. But let me tell you something that no one said out loud back then. You were never wrong to trust. You were only early in learning where your boundaries truly lived. That experience wasn't about being taken advantage of. It was about discovering your own worth in a world that often prices things too cheaply. Aquarius souls are wired for vision, not negotiation. You see possibilities where others see profit. You move with intuition while others move with strategy. And sometimes, that makes you generous with people who are still operating from fear. The universe didn't punish you for that. It refined you. It taught you the difference between giving and disappearing, between being kind and being invisible, between loyalty and self-abandonment. And now, you carry a new kind of awareness. You listen more to your body than to promises. You trust your timing more than other people's urgency. You understand that fairness is not something you request. It's something you require. Here's a quiet question for you. If that same situation happened today, would you still stay silent? Or would you choose yourself without explanation? Because the most powerful shift in your life isn't external. It's the moment you stopped negotiating your value in spaces that benefited from you staying small. You didn't lose that deal. You graduated from it. And somewhere, without you ever needing to say a word, the energy you left behind is still catching up to the truth you already live in. There is a moment in every Aquarius life when something inside goes quiet. Not numb, not cold, just clear. It feels like standing in a room you once loved and realizing the air has changed. Nothing dramatic happened, no explosion, no final sentence. Just a soft inner knowing that says, This is no longer where my energy belongs. And you listened. That is the part most people will never understand about you. They think power looks like confrontation. They think strength sounds loud. But for you, power has always been about alignment, about noticing when your soul starts leaning away before your mind can explain why. You didn't leave because you were defeated. You left because you were awake. There is a special kind of courage in walking away without collecting witnesses, in choosing distance without needing to prove harm, in releasing a situation while everyone else still thinks you are fine. From the outside, it looks like disappearance. From the inside, it feels like breathing again. Aquarius, you have always known how to detach without becoming bitter. You do not burn bridges, you dissolve them. You let the river take what no longer flows with you. And in that quiet exit, something sacred happened. You stopped asking for permission to be whole. You stopped negotiating your presence. You stopped waiting for someone else to recognize your value. Not with anger, not with speeches, just with absence. That kind of absence is not emptiness. It is sovereignty. You didn't need closure because your nervous system already closed the chapter. You didn't need justice because your spirit chose peace. You didn't need revenge because you understood something deeper. Energy that no longer resonates will always reveal itself through discomfort first, and you finally trusted that signal. There is a myth that walking away means losing. But you know the truth. Walking away is often the first time you actually win, not the ego win, the soul win. You reclaimed your time, your attention, your emotional bandwidth. You took your light back from a space that had grown used to borrowing it. And here is the part no one talks about. When you leave quietly, the system you exit starts to feel your absence more than your presence ever could. Not because you want them to suffer, but because your energy was holding things together without being acknowledged. Now they have to sit with the silence you created, and you get to sit with the freedom you earned. Let me ask you something softly. Do you notice how much lighter your body feels now, even when nothing external has changed? That is your power returning to its original owner. Aquarius, your gift is not endurance. It is discernment. Knowing when to stay is wisdom. Knowing when to leave is mastery. You did not abandon anything. You graduated from a version of yourself that no longer needed to overgive to be loved. And as you continue forward, there will be more doors, more offers, more people drawn to your frequency. But this time, you are different. You are not looking for belonging. You are embodying it. You are no longer asking, will they value me? You are asking, does this align with who I have become? And that single shift changes everything. You did not walk away to escape. You walked away to remember who you were before you started shrinking. And that memory is the most powerful thing you carry into whatever comes next. There is a strange moment that happens after you leave. Not immediately, not loudly, but quietly in the background of someone else's life. While you are learning how to breathe again, how to sleep without tension in your shoulders, how to wake up without checking your phone for emotional weather reports, something very different is happening on the other side. Not chaos, not punishment, just a slow internal echo. They start noticing the silence where your presence used to be. Not in a dramatic way, more like a room that feels colder, even though the temperature never changed. At first, they distract themselves. New goals, new conversations, new versions of success. But there is a subtle hollowness underneath it all. Because what they gained did not replace what they lost. And that is the kind of loss no one can see. the kind that does not show up on bank statements or social media, the kind that lives in the chest, in the quiet moments before sleep, when there is no audience left to impress. Aquarius, this is where guilt is born. Not from morality, from emptiness. Not because they suddenly became wise, but because something inside them stopped feeling full. The money feels heavier. The achievements feel flatter. The praise feels shorter. Even laughter feels like it ends too quickly. And they cannot explain why. Because the truth is uncomfortable. It requires facing a moment where something real was exchanged for something convenient, where trust was traded for advantage, where connection was replaced with control. And no one taught them how to sit with that. So they carry it instead. They carry it into their relationships, and into their decisions, into their reflections. You are not in their life anymore, but you are in their nervous system, in their memory, in the version of themselves that knows exactly what happened, even if they never speak it out loud. Here is the part that feels cosmic. Guilt is not loud. It does not scream. It whispers. It shows up as restlessness, as overthinking, as the feeling that something is missing, even when everything looks fine. And because they cannot name it, they project it. They compare. They justify. They replay the past in small pieces, trying to rearrange it into something more comfortable. But the body remembers what the mind tries to rewrite. You, meanwhile, are not carrying any of this. Not because you are cold, but because you processed your pain instead of avoiding it. You chose grief over denial, distance over performance, healing over control. And that difference changes everything. Let me ask you something gently. Have you noticed how your peace does not need validation anymore? That is because you already paid the emotional cost up front. They postponed it. You faced the discomfort of letting go. They are facing the discomfort of living with themselves. This is not karma in the dramatic sense. No lightning, no revenge arc, just emotional gravity. What is unresolved always pulls inward. What is healed no longer needs to return. So while they sit with questions they cannot escape, you are sitting with clarity you earned. You are not watching their struggle. You are not waiting for apology. You are not even thinking about them most days. And that is the most ironic part. The one who walked away is free. The one who stayed behind carries the weight. Not because you wanted this outcome, but because consciousness always moves toward light, and avoidance always moves toward shadow. You chose awareness. They chose comfort. And only one of those leads to peace. So if you ever wonder why your life feels quieter now, why your heart feels lighter without explanation, why your intuition feels sharper than it used to, it is because your soul is no longer sharing space with unresolved energy. You are not haunted by the past. You are inhabited by the present. And somewhere out there, someone is learning the difference between having everything and feeling whole. There comes a point when the past stops being heavy and starts becoming inconvenient. Not for you, for them. Because once guilt settles in, it does not stay quiet. It begins to look for movement, a way out, a way to rebalance the emotional weight without having to name it. So the mind gets creative. They do not think in terms of apology. They think in terms of strategy. Not how do I make this right, but how do I make this feel less uncomfortable? You see, accountability requires identity. It asks someone to say, I was wrong. And for many people, that feels more threatening than loss itself. So instead of honesty, they choose design. They imagine scenarios where they can enter your life again, but wearing a different mask. not the one that failed you, the one that looks generous, helpful, supportive. They rehearse conversations that sound innocent, opportunities that feel organic, offers that seem coincidental. On the surface, it looks like kindness. Underneath, it is avoidance dressed in good intentions. Because giving something back without admitting the harm is easier than sitting with the truth of who they were. Aquarius, this is where your energy feels almost prophetic. You sense when something is being offered from clarity and when it is being offered from relief-seeking. The body knows the difference before the mind does. That subtle tension you feel in certain invitations. That pause in your chest when someone reaches out unexpectedly. That quiet thought that says, "This feels familiar in a way I have outgrown." That is your intuition reading emotional subtext, not words. They are not trying to reconnect with you. They are trying to reconnect with the version of themselves that existed before they crossed their own line. You just happen to be the symbol of that moment. And here is the part most people never realize. When someone cannot admit fault, they do not heal. They negotiate. They turn healing into a transaction, a way to pay emotional debt without changing their internal structure. But debt paid without awareness does not disappear. It mutates. It becomes overcompensation, overgenerosity, unnecessary involvement, a desire to be seen as good rather than to become honest. So they offer what looks like repair, but feels like control. Not control over you, control over their self-image. Let me ask you something gently. Have you noticed how you no longer feel tempted to explain yourself, even when something seems beneficial on paper? That is not resistance. That is self-trust. You are no longer attracted to energy that needs to rewrite history in order to feel clean. You understand something subtle now. True repair is simple. It says, "I see what I did. I take responsibility. I do not need to hide from myself." Anything else is just choreography. And the reason you can feel this so clearly is because you already walked through the discomfort they are trying to avoid. You faced your loss directly. You named your pain internally. You allowed yourself to be changed by it. They are trying to return to balance without allowing transformation. That is why their plans feel elaborate, and your peace feels effortless. You are not waiting for anything from them. Not answers, not closure, not compensation. You are already aligned with your truth. So when something unexpected appears in your life, an offer, a message, a sudden opening, you will feel it immediately. Not as excitement, but as neutrality. And that is the biggest shift of all. You are no longer pulled by what feels unresolved. You are guided by what feels clean. You are not interested in transactions of guilt. You are interested in relationships of consciousness. And that difference makes you untouchable by old dynamics. You are not part of anyone's plan anymore. You are living inside your own design. And that is a frequency no strategy can imitate. There is a kind of silence that feels empty, and there is another kind that feels complete. You are living inside the second one now, not the silence of waiting, not the silence of avoidance, but the silence that comes after something inside has finally settled. You are no longer scanning the world for signals, no longer checking energy for meaning, no longer trying to decode what anyone else is thinking. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped needing to know. This is a very rare state, Aquarius. Most people spend their entire lives reacting, responding, explaining, defending, managing impressions. You chose something different. You chose stillness. And stillness is not passive. It is selective. It means your nervous system no longer jumps at every emotional vibration. It means your mind no longer rehearses imaginary conversations. It means your heart no longer needs external confirmation to feel grounded. You are quiet because you are no longer negotiating your worth. They are quiet because they are afraid of what might surface if they speak. Two silences. One is rooted. The other is restless. You can feel the difference in your body. Your silence feels spacious, like standing near water at night, listening to waves without needing to name them. Their silence feels tense, like holding breath in a crowded room, hoping no one asks the wrong question. You see, when you step out of a dynamic consciously, you remove yourself from its emotional gravity. You are no longer pulled, no longer orbiting old narratives, no longer trying to resolve something that has already resolved inside you. That is why nothing feels urgent anymore. No messages to send, no timelines to follow, no proof to collect. You already have the answer you needed. It lives in your calm. Most people believe silence means something is unfinished, but your kind of silence means something is integrated. You did not suppress the experience, you metabolized it. You let it pass through your system instead of letting it define your future. And that is why you do not need to act. Action comes from tension, from lack, from internal noise. Your silence comes from alignment, from coherence, from a nervous system that no longer feels threatened by uncertainty. Let me ask you something softly. When was the last time you felt truly bored by drama? Not triggered, not tempted, just uninterested. That is a sign of emotional maturity few people ever reach. You are no longer activated by what once controlled you. You are no longer curious about explanations that cannot change anything. You are no longer trying to be understood by people who are not listening to themselves. And because of that, your silence is not an absence. It is a presence. It is the presence of self-trust, of emotional sovereignty, of internal authority. You are not waiting for the world to respond. You are responding to your own inner climate. They, on the other hand, are still waiting for something external to fix what is internal. So they pause, they hesitate, they monitor. They remain quiet not because they are peaceful, but because they are uncertain which version of themselves they can safely present. You already know which version of yourself is real. The one who does not need to perform. The one who does not need to explain. The one who does not need to revisit the past to feel validated in the present. Your silence feels like a deep breath that does not end. Theirs feels like a breath being held. And the most powerful thing about your position is this. Nothing needs to happen for you to continue healing. You are not waiting for resolution. You are living inside it. Your stillness is not a pause. It is a destination. And from this place, anything that enters your life will have to meet you at your level of calm. Not your wounds, not your history, not your patterns, just your presence. And that is why you do not need to do anything. You already did the hardest thing. You became someone who does not need noise to feel alive. There is a moment when life begins to feel strangely generous, not exciting, not dramatic, just subtly kind. Things arrive without effort. Doors open without struggle. Support appears in forms you did not request, and the mind wants to call it coincidence, timing, luck. But your body knows better. Because this kind of return does not feel like reward. It feels like balance. Not the kind that celebrates you, the kind that quietly corrects something that was once tilted. What comes back does not announce itself. It does not say, This is for what happened. It does not reference the past. It simply enters your life and fits. A conversation that leads to opportunity, an unexpected financial ease, a collaboration that feels natural, a gift that arrives without explanation. Nothing emotional, nothing symbolic, nothing heavy, just practical. That is how real energetic return works. It does not want attention, it wants neutrality. Because the purpose is not to remind you of what was lost. It is to remove the residue of imbalance from your nervous system. This is why it feels almost anticlimactic. You do not feel vindicated. You do not feel triumphant. You barely feel anything at all. And that is the point. True return does not stimulate the ego. It settles the body. It restores internal equilibrium, not emotional narrative. Somewhere else, someone is feeling something very different. Not relief, not joy, but a quiet discomfort that cannot be shared. Because when something unresolved finds its way back to the person who released it, the person who carried it must finally face what they avoided. Not publicly, not dramatically, internally. They do not feel punished. They feel exposed to themselves. And that exposure is not loud. It is a slow, intimate form of shame. Not the kind that wants forgiveness, the kind that wants silence. Because silence is easier than naming the truth. So they frame it as coincidence, as generosity, as random kindness. They make it look casual. Because admitting the real reason would require vulnerability they do not yet have. But the universe does not need confession to correct energy. It only needs alignment. You aligned by letting go. They are aligning by returning what never belonged to them in the first place. Not consciously, not heroically, subconsciously, through discomfort, through restlessness, through the urge to rebalance something they cannot explain. Let me ask you something softly. Have you noticed how these returns do not create excitement, but create a sense of quiet rightness? That is because nothing is being gained. Something is being released. The last thread of a past dynamic dissolving from your field. This is not a blessing. It is a completion. You are not receiving, you are closing. And because you already detached emotionally, what comes back cannot attach itself again. It passes through your life without creating new stories, without reopening old doors, without triggering memory. It simply integrates, like a breath that finishes a long exhale. Most people expect justice to feel powerful, but real justice feels invisible. It feels like your body no longer carries weight it forgot was there. It feels like peace becoming physical. So when something arrives without explanation, without effort, without emotional charge, you do not need to ask why. You already know. It is not luck. It is not fate. It is not reward. It is energetic housekeeping. The universe returning what was never meant to be missing from you. And the reason it feels so gentle is because you no longer need it to mean anything. You are not waiting for the past to be acknowledged. You are already living beyond it. So whatever comes now does not arrive to change your story. It arrives because the story is already finished. And this is what true return looks like. Not fireworks, not closure speeches, not emotional scenes. Just a quiet life that feels lighter for reasons you do not need to explain. It feels quieter now. Not the kind of silence that comes from emptiness, but the kind that arrives after a long storm, when even the air seems to breathe differently. I want you to notice something, Aquarius. Your shoulders are lower. Your thoughts are slower. The urgency that once lived inside your chest has softened into something gentler. Almost like relief, but deeper than that. More like inner permission. There is a moment in every soul's journey where the universe stops testing and starts observing, not to judge, but to see if you still need the old story to feel alive. And lately, you do not. You walked away without fireworks, without revenge, without proof, and that, quietly, changed everything. Most people think winning looks like being paid back, an apology, a public recognition, a visible collapse of the one who caused the wound. But that is not your timeline anymore. That was a chapter written for who you used to be. The real victory happened the day you stopped rehearsing conversations in your head. The day you no longer imagined what you would say if they finally called. The day you realized their silence did not feel heavy anymore. It felt irrelevant. That is not indifference. That is freedom. You see, karma does not always return as pain to the other person. Sometimes it returns as peace to you. And peace is a currency most people do not know how to spend. They might still carry the memory, the discomfort, the unresolved energy they pretend not to feel. They can keep their version of the story polished and intact, but they will never experience what you are experiencing right now. Lightness without explanation, rest without guilt, joy without a witness. That is the real win. And here is something no one tells you. When you release emotional debt, you become unpredictable to fate, not chaotic, but untouchable, because the universe can no longer manipulate you through desire, validation, or unfinished business. You are no longer available for karmic loops. You do not orbit old wounds. You do not chase closure. You do not need to be understood to feel complete. That is rare, especially for a mind like yours, always searching for meaning, patterns, cosmic logic. Yet now, you are living in a different frequency, one that does not require answers to feel aligned. There's a strange beauty in knowing you could meet them again and feel nothing dramatic. No tension, no speech prepared. Just a calm awareness that this chapter closed itself without your effort. And that is why the universe trusts you with better things now. Not louder, not flashier, but cleaner, more honest, more emotionally sustainable. You are not winning because you escaped. You are winning because you no longer need to escape. So let me ask you something gently. Not to provoke your mind, but to awaken your intuition. If no one ever acknowledges what you endured, would you still choose to stay this peaceful? Because if the answer is yes, then you already crossed the line most people never reach. The place where healing stops being a process and becomes a state of being. And from here, Aquarius, life does not feel like a lesson anymore. It feels like a reward you do not need to prove you deserve. Before you go, Aquarius, I want you to stay with me for just a few more breaths, not to learn anything new, but to remember something ancient inside you. There is a reason this message found you now, not because you were searching, but because you were finally ready to receive without resistance, ready to listen without trying to fix, ready to exist without proving. That is the quiet miracle no one talks about. When life stops feeling like a puzzle and starts feeling like a conversation. You are not here to compete with the past. You are here to outgrow it, and you already have. The universe does not reward loud healing. It responds to honest healing, the kind no one claps for. The kind that happens when you choose peace even when nobody sees it. And tonight, wherever you are listening from, I want you to feel this truth settle gently in your body. You are not late. You are not broken. You are not missing anything essential. You are becoming unrecognizable to your old fears, and that is a blessing. If something inside you softened while listening, that is your intuition waking up. If you felt seen without being explained, that is your soul remembering itself. And if you are still here with me at the end of this message, that means your journey is far from over. So let me ask you something simple but powerful. What would your life look like if you trusted yourself just 5% more than you did yesterday? You do not need to answer out loud. Just feel the direction your heart points to. And if this space feels safe to you, leave a comment. Not for me, for the other Aquarians who think they are walking alone. Your words might become someone else's sign. Subscribe if you want to keep receiving these messages. Not because you need guidance, but because sometimes it helps to be reminded of what you already know. This channel is not here to predict your future. It is here to reflect the version of you that is already emerging. And I promise you this: the next message is coming, not to warn you, but to meet you where you are becoming. Until then, trust yourself. The universe already does.